Hello and welcome everyone to tonight's Services Delegated Committee meeting. As Councillor Baillieu is not in attendance tonight, as the Coordinator of Governance, I am seeking nominations for a temporary chair for this evening. Do I have any nominations? Councillor?
I nominate Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Excellent. Thank you. I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Good evening, everyone. As Councillor Baillieu is not in attendance tonight, the Coordinator of Governance has just called for nominations, and I'm very pleased that I've been nominated, and I'm very happy to be the chairperson this evening. Welcome and thank you for attending the Services Delegated Committee. My name is Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, and I will assume the seat of chairperson and begin this meeting. I will now start by introducing my fellow councillors. On the horseshoe table, seated to my left, is Councillor Shima Hibuki, Councillor Wes Gold, Councillor Michael Nolan, Councillor Felicity Simfield, and on the opposite side of the horseshoe table is our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Franco, Councillor Mel Osborne-Smith, our Mayor, Councillor Sophie Tawney, Councillor John Franpera, and Councillor Chris Pattis. Good evening. I'd also like to acknowledge our CEO, sitting here on my right, Mr. Philip Storer. I won't wish the role of councillor upon you. And on my left, our Coordinator of Governance, Ms. Kirsten Ritchie. Thank you. The purpose of the Services Delegated Committee is to deal with issues relating to the provision of human and physical services and council infrastructure. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda and I will be introducing an officer, I will then call you one by one to come forward as you address council. I will ask speakers to sit at the top of the horseshoe table, and I will invite those against the officer's recommendation to speak first, followed by those in favour. When making a submission, you are requested to present your viewpoint clearly and concisely on why you agree or disagree with the proposal. You may suggest an alternative approach which will satisfy your concerns. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said, and please keep the discussion focused on the relevant issues. There is a limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, and that includes councillors. The chairperson, or as the chairperson, I reserve the right to vary that, but seldom do. At the 2.5 minute mark, I will ring a bell, which this bell here, to indicate that you have 30 seconds left remaining on your presentation. After you have spoken, please remain at the table, which is at the end of the horseshoe table here, while I ask councillors if they have any questions for you. For those in the gallery this evening, I would like to take this opportunity to remind you that whilst we have different opinions and concerns and issues, I would like to ask you to please be respectful to each other and their differences. This includes remaining quiet while others are addressing the meeting and not disrupting the decision-making process of the committee. And to finish, I would just like to encourage all submitters, officers and councillors to speak directly into their microphone. This will ensure that everyone can clearly hear the discussion. I'll move on now to apologies. Ms. Ritchie, are there any apologies this evening?
Thank you, and through you, there is one apology, Councillor Baillieu.
Thank you. Declaration of conflict of interest. Is there any councillor or councillor officer in the room this evening that wanted to foreshadow a conflict? I see no lights on. Thank you. We will now move to item 3, which is the presentation of officer report. Item 3.1, Reserve Road. I will call upon Mr. Jim Hondrakis, Manager of Traffic and Transport. Good evening, Mr. Hondrakis. Now, we have 12 people that have indicated they wish to make a submission on this matter. 6 are against the recommendation in the report and 6 support the recommendation. Once I have announced the names of presenters, as I mentioned earlier, I ask that you please come and sit at the top of the horseshoe table. And if you're not present when your name is called, we will then move on to the next speaker. Again, I remind you all that there are 3 minutes for the presentation. Now, before we begin with presentations, I will call upon Mr. Hondrakis to speak to this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform Council of submissions received in relation to the temporary closure of Reserve Road, to provide details on the traffic and parking changes implemented, and to seek approval for modifications to the temporary closure. Camberwell Primary School raised safety concerns for a section of Reserve Road adjacent to the school campuses, playground area and roadway traffic, as well as parking and school drop-off and pick-up concerns. In response, at its Services Delegated Committee meeting on the 2nd of December 2024, Council resolved to 1. Support the temporary closure of Reserve Road immediately to the west of the school's access into Reserve Road and Burke Road using waterfield barriers. Arrange for the temporary closure to be in place for the beginning of the 2025 school year. Reserve Road was temporarily closed on 24th of January 2025. School commenced on Thursday, the 30th of January 2025. What you can see before you is the waterfield barriers and the closures at either end of Reserve Road. The placement of the barriers at the Camberwell Road end maintain vehicle access to the 2 Uniting Church properties, as well as access to the school as they are entitled to. Next attachment. The top photograph shows the closure at the Camberwell Road end of Reserve Road, and you will note that there is a removable bollard at this location. The bottom right-hand side, we actually have the closure at the Burke Road end, and you will note that Reserve Road at Burke Road is actually narrowed, and it is not possible to enter Reserve Road via Burke Road. We have met with all key stakeholders, including Our Lady of Victory's Basilica, Camberwell Uniting Church, Camberwell Junction Tennis Club, Camberwell Primary School, and Camberwell Music Society. We have also received submissions and responded to St John's Anglican Church, Hawthorne Glen Probus Club, Sing Australia, U3A, and the general community. The key issue raised by the churches, tennis club, community hall, community groups and community was the loss of convenient parking, including disability parking, and the need for pick-up drop-off facilities. There was also a need to retain access to Our Lady of Victory's Basilica via Reserve Road from Camberwell Road through the temporary closure to allow for wedding and funeral vehicles to access the Basilica. This is because access to Reserve Road for the Basilica is not possible via Burke Road, as Reserve Road is narrowed at Burke Road with only an exit. Maintaining access to the Basilica via Reserve Road is required, as they have access rights to and from their property. We need to have the next attachment. What you can see before you there is the route shown in red, broken red, which shows the access into the Basilica for funeral and vehicles. Officers currently remove and reinstate the bollard in Reserve Road to allow for funeral and wedding vehicle access. This is during the week for funerals and weekends for weddings. In consideration of the parking issues raised by stakeholders, we have changed the parking in Inglesby Road, Burke Road and Camberwell Road. For Camberwell Road, we've incorporated 5 and 10-minute parking during school drop-off and pick-up periods and 3-hour parking in between. For Burke Road, we've got a combination of 2-hour and 3-hour parking and some 10-minute parking bays. And we actually have new 5-minute drop-off pick-up bays in Inglesby Road. The fees that applied for parking in these sections of Camberwell Road and Burke Road have been removed. In view of the access and parking issues raised, we developed a proposal to modify the temporary road closure. This involves widening of Reserve Road at Burke Road to allow for two-way access to and from Reserve Road at Burke Road. Approval from the Department of Transport and Planning for this change was received on 23rd of January 2025. This is shown as attachment 5 in the report. Next slide. Two-way access for Reserve Road at Burke Road would allow the waterfill barriers to be placed further within Reserve Road and lead to the following. It will allow for wedding and funeral vehicle access into Reserve Road from Burke Road rather than Camberwell Road to access the Basilica circular driveway, and avoids the need to remove and reinstate the bollard at the Camberwell Road end associated with the current closure. It also reduces the impact on parking, as it would allow for 23 parking bays in Reserve Road at the Burke Road end to better meet the needs of the tennis club, the Basilica, as well as other users. It also allows for convenient disability parking, and it also retains the existing 13 parking bays in Reserve Road at the Camberwell Road end. This option is considered to be an achievable and effective solution that would respond well to many of the issues raised by stakeholders and can be implemented in the short term. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hondurakis. And before we go any further, I just wanted to acknowledge Di Gillies is with us this evening, the former councillor of the Junction Ward. Good evening, Di Gillies. Thank you. Right. We will now move on to members of the gallery that wish to present this evening. I will call upon Mary Buckingham to please come to the seat at the horseshoe table. Good evening, Mary. If I could ask you to please start by your name and suburb, and I can see that you're sitting very close towards the microphone, so that's wonderful. Just speak nice and loud and clear so we can all hear you. With your name, please.
Yes, my name is Mary Buckingham, and I live in Ashburton. I am against the proposal. I run a Scottish country dancing group on a Thursday night and often on a Saturday evening at the Camberwell Uniting Church. I'm also the President of Victoria for the Royal Scottish Country Dance Society, and that organisation uses the facilities at the Camberwell Uniting Church on Saturday afternoons and some other occasions. A lot of my members have actually signed a petition against this because we all use the Reserve Road car parking area quite extensively. I also feel that I sit at a cafe in Ashburton, which is about 4 doors away from a crossing, and I cannot get over the number of parents who can't walk down to the crossing and teach their children how to use them. Rather, they hold on to them, well, often they don't even hold on to them, they weave their way between the cars. So children are not learning anything about road safety at home in a lot of circumstances, and we're better to learn it than at a primary school when they're supervised and crossing the road to go to various functions on the other side of Reserve Road. So that's really basically what I wanted to say. But we all use Reserve Road and it's caused quite a lot of consternation. We did also use one of the halls last year for classes at the Camberwell Uniting, at the Camberwell Primary School. And because of this, I think the organisation has decided not to use Camberwell Primary School for their classes on a Saturday. I can't see why, if it's all about child safety, why the closure is over the weekends and at night time when the school is not in function. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Look, thank you very much. And if you could just remain there, I can see that we have lights on from councillors that would like to ask questions. So I'll go first to Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. I'm just keen to clarify your position. You said initially that you were opposed to this recommendation.
Yes.
Which is, I'll just step you through it, this is to partially open, so to create more parking. So,
I'm not against partially opening more openings. I'm just against the closures, sorry.
no, that's okay. So you can see the officer's recommendation on the board up there, which is to support the
Yes,
modifications.
I did hear what he was saying. Yes.
So you're probably in support of that one, is that?
Yeah, more space has been available, yes.
No worries. Thanks very much.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Franco.
I was going to raise the same thing, just to clarify if you were opposed to the recommendation and support because it's to
probably I
provide
didn't,
more parking.
yes.
Thanks. Yep.
Okay, sorry.
No
I may be
problem.
speaking out of turn then, I don't know, but
Yeah,
just
and
something I feel strongly about, sorry.
Look, and I'm really pleased councillors asked that question because I sensed you were opposing the officer recommendation, but I just wanted to hear you speak to determine if that was correct. So thank you very much for your presentation. You may return to the gallery.
Thank you.
I now call upon John Hickey. John, if you could please come forward. Good evening, John. If you could just please state your name, your suburb, and again, I see that you're a no, but in part, so if you could clarify. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
First of all, John Hickey, and Camberwell is my address and has been for 70 years here, so
You're a local.
just wouldn't go anywhere else either.
All right,
so
please
Chair and-
proceed. Thank you.
Chair and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to comment. In the report to the council, the officers made mention of the traffic flow between Inglesby Road and Reserve Road, and about the same numbers. However, I read it as having different characteristics. Reserve Road is more of a thoroughfare road that traffic moves along it, whereas Reserve Road is a piecemeal, in a sense, to drop off, collect. It's not a direct road as often as Inglesby Road is. Therefore, I see that Reserve Road is a safer option for children than Inglesby Road is. And if they have to park at Inglesby and then walk down through the park, then I'd prefer the Reserve Road to be the primary route of access. Given the state government's proposal to significantly increase residential densities around the Junction precinct, traffic volumes on Camberwell Road, Burke Road will clearly and materially improve or increase, and that potentially will have an impact on safety if children are asked to move with their families are moving across from what's the car park beyond the old Golden Bowl to move through across Camberwell Road. I just think that inherently creates an extra level of danger with the increased density of traffic that will occur if the proposal to increase densities occurs. Particularly in the morning peak. I think if you have the number of kids pressing the button to go across the morning peak with the increased density along Camberwell Road going into the city will be marked. The council's decision will also have a knock-on effect on weekends to St John's and Burke Road, the Uniting Church on Camberwell, as well as OLV. And car park, being at a premium, might also see a spillover into the adjoining streets, which is probably not going to help residents in those adjoining areas. So again, it's a convenience thing that the ability to park on the main roads will be taken up quickly, I think, and it will therefore spread traffic further down into the roads to the west. So in my submission, the exercise turns on finding a safe and supporting community outcome, and the community, in my view, has been at the core of Camberwell and Burundara councils as long as I've been here. And I wouldn't like to live anywhere else, but I would like to think that community spirit would be maintained. Thank you.
And look, you've got 30 more seconds. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay, I'm done.
All right, well, thank you for your presentation. Now I can see Councillor Franco has his light on. Councillor Franco.
Thank you, John. Just to clarify, you said you preferred kids to use Reserve Road. And I wasn't clear what you meant. You prefer them because they are crossing on reserve road. So you mean, what do you mean by you'd prefer the kids to use
I'm
reserve
preferring
road?
that reserve road remains as is now, and that the children don't have to come across Camberwell Road if they elect to have their parents park on the northern side of Camberwell Road and come through that alleyway.
Okay, so yes, so you don't support the current recommendation, you support the current arrangements?
I support attachment 5, but I would like it to go further and to remain as is.
So as is the full closure?
The full road to be open, no closure at all.
Not as is. You mean prior to?
Prior to, yes.
So it's currently fully closed and kids are using it, but you prefer it to be open to traffic rather than
correct
a pedestrian?
Yes.
Right.
Because their kids are being dropped off by parents in a less trafficable situation. There's not traffic like Inglesby, the traffic is moving. Camberwell Road, the traffic's moving, but in Reserve Road, it's drop off, collect, drop off, collect.
And do you have any suggestions for how we address the safety issues there?
Bollards, ramps, 20k minimum limits. I think it could be done by proper use of traffic control. Maybe even narrowing the road a bit, increase a bit more parkland.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Galt.
Thank you very much. It's just a small question. You may, in fact, realise this, but the closure will apply all day. And one of the major concerns we had when proposing a closure was that the campus is split between two sides of the road, requiring children during the day not just to drop off and pick up time to cross that road, both for potentially use of classrooms at the other side and to use the green space that's been opened up in recent years. We were concerned that's happening all day. Were you aware of that?
No.
Okay.
Well, I went to that school as a kid, so I'm well aware of crossing the road. I suppose the only thing in regard to that is, again, how often do the kids cross from one? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Chair.
You can go back to the gallery.
Thank you.
I now call upon Peter Gray. Good evening, Peter. If you could just commence with your name and suburb, please. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Peter Gray and I am a resident and ratepayer in Hawthorn.
Thank you.
I'm the president of the Camberwell Music Society. We present fine music concerts at the Camberwell Uniting Church. Our concerts are on Saturday evenings and on Tuesday mornings at 10:30. Our audience is predominantly elderly and local. Many of our people have relied on being able to park close to our venue and will be unable to attend now that they cannot do that. We are grateful to the officers for doing what they could to replace the parking lost by the closure of Reserve Road, but it is not enough. All of the parking spaces provided are existing, repurposed. They are available for everyone. There is no guarantee that they will be vacant when our people arrive. The school is the state of Victoria's. By operating a school, the state becomes subject to a very strict duty of care, equivalent to that of a parent, to care for the safety of each child. If the state wants to operate a school with two campuses separated by a road, its duty is to ensure that the students can cross the road safely. Somehow the state has cast that duty onto the city of Boroondara. The city has different duties to a much wider range of people. It has policies for the well-being of people in a number of categories, including the elderly. Those duties and those policies have been ignored in the decision to close this road. We have been left well behind in the process. Even the report to this meeting doesn't reveal the groundswell of opposition to the road closure. Councillors have not been told of the substance of the submissions and that many organisations have made, and there is no mention in the report of the well-subscribed petition that has circulated online. For that reason, we request that this meeting not accept the recommendation of the officers, because underlying it is the continued closure of Reserve Road. We say that Council should conduct a proper inquiry into the proposal to close Reserve Road, an inquiry in which everyone is able to have a fair say. We believe that such an inquiry would not result in closure of the road for 365 days and nights each year. We need to ensure the safety of children crossing the road.
Excuse me, Mr Gray, your 3 minutes is up. Could I ask, are you close to concluding your presentation?
I'm in my last sentence,
Thank you very
Madam
much.
Chair. We need to ensure the safety of children crossing the road during 2 breaks between classes on 192, a little over half of those days.
All right. Thank you for your presentation. I do not see any councillor lights on, so you may go back to the gallery. Thank you very much. I call upon Michael McCluskey. If you could please come to the horseshoe table. Thank you. Now, Michael, on your sheet it's indicated that you do not support the officer recommendation. If you could just clarify that, but could you also please just state your name and suburb? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Michael McCluskey and I live in Camberwell. I'm a parishioner of Our Lady of Victory's Basilica. And I welcome this opportunity to address you tonight because I think it is important that Council be made aware of the distress, bewilderment and concern felt by many of my fellow parishioners at the closure of Reserve Road and the impact it has had on them. The closure directly affects and will continue to impact upon the 250 or so parishioners who attend weekend masses at Our Lady of Victory's, many of whom are elderly or have mobility issues, Christmas and Easter services, which see the Basilica packed to capacity, the many wedding and baptismal services held throughout the year, as well as funeral services, many of which also see the Basilica at full capacity. The current loss of some 66 parking bays along Reserve Road has had a dramatic impact on Basilica accessibility for all of the above. While the proposal before Council this evening will, if adopted, provide some mitigation, it is in essence a band-aid solution that will not resolve the basic issue. A little background on the history of the current 2-campus configuration of Camberwell Primary School might help to provide some relevant context for Council's consideration of this matter. It was in September 2014, in response to an urgent approach from Camberwell Primary School, that the then parish priest of Our Lady of Victories, Father Michael Morgan, agreed in a spirit of genuine community cooperation to make Our Lady of Victory's school and grounds available to Camberwell Primary School. The then principal of Camberwell Primary School was quoted at the time as saying, "We are so thankful for Father Michael's positive support and great friendship. To have a second campus option is really beyond words. We have a number of portable classrooms on site that limit our children's available space to play. So to come up with a local solution is such a wonderful result." Father Morgan, who passed away late last year, would be turning in his grave if he knew that his community-motivated gesture had ultimately led to the closure of Reserve Road and the impact it has had on the Basilica and its parishioners. Parking was not an issue at that time because, as in addition to the spaces available in Reserve Road, the area next to Our Lady of Victory School was also a major public car park that was available for use by parishioners and visitors alike. As you will be aware, that space has recently been redeveloped as a children's activity area and is no longer available for parking. The current complete closure of Reserve Road and even the proposed modifications before Council this evening are, in my view, an extreme response to the school safety concerns that have been raised. Why does the road have to be closed 24/7, 365 days a year? Why not keep the road open, reduce the speed limit to say 30 or even 20 kilometres an hour and install traffic calming measures, something along the lines currently in place at the council building end of Inglesby Road?
Thank you. Can I ask that you please conclude?
In considering these options, which would serve the interests of all stakeholders in this matter equally, do not appear to have been given due consideration in the current decision-making process. In considering the proposal before you this evening, councillors, I would implore you to take into consideration the legitimate interests of the wider Burundara community. And in that regard, I would urge you to defer taking any final decision on the matter until all alternative options have been fully explored and evaluated.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Now, I see we have Councillor Pettis lights on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did miss the gentleman's name.
Michael.
Michael. Thank you, Michael. I want to ask you a question so that I can clarify how you would suggest we proceed. The motion we have before us is to go from temporarily closing the whole of Reserve Road to temporarily closing less of it. That's in effect, in simple language, what the motion is. So the officers are recommending that we still close it temporarily, but we close less of it. If you were to advise us how to proceed, because the question here isn't going back, the word temporary is the important one. So what would we have to satisfy, in your opinion, for this to become not a temporary solution, but a final solution? So what further action do you think we should be taking as councillors to go from the current temporary solution to maybe a more final solution in your mind?
I think that it's important to investigate alternative options such as putting in speed humps around the crossing, making the crossing a full pedestrian crossing, lowering the speed limit to 30 or even 20 kilometres an hour. If it's considered necessary to keep that part of the road closed during school times, by all means, keep it closed during school times with appropriate signage and retractable barriers, but not to keep it closed in a way that it is currently. And I do acknowledge that if it is temporary, then what is proposed in the tonight's recommendation has some merit, but it does not go to address the basic long-term issue.
Thank you, Councillor Pettis. Councillor Friend-Pierre, you've got your light on.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to clarify that point as well. So the proposal before us tonight will actually increase the number of spaces, returns 23 spaces. So in a simple yes, no, are you supportive or not of
that is a positive over the current situation, yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question on the same. I had two questions. And just again to clarify, because council officers are working in accordance with the former resolution on a longer term solution, you would prefer the current existing arrangements to exist until such time, or you prefer the changes recommended in the report before us until a further recommendation can be developed?
If the changes recommended tonight are temporary pending a longer term decision, then clearly I would support the improvement that the current temporary proposal deals with, which is the restoration of 23 But as I said earlier, it does not go to addressing the basic issue that needs much more in-depth consideration and consultation.
And one other question, if I might, Chair. You've focused in your presentation on parking and the impacts of parking, but you haven't spoken about the functionality of the site and the road in relation to weddings and funerals, which is a key feature of the council officer's report, and the current arrangements versus the alternate temporary arrangements, and how the church sees those up against each other. I'm interested in your thoughts or the views of the Basilica, etc., in relation to the weddings and funerals. Putting aside the parking, I know the parking others have spoken about, but you have other operational requirements that are a key feature of this report, and I wonder if you have any thoughts on those.
I'm speaking as a parishioner of Our Lady of Victories, and when I mentioned weddings and funerals, I mentioned it from the parking perspective, so those attending the Basilica to attend wedding services and funeral services. I wasn't, and I'm not in a position to comment on the recommendations insofar as the access for the wedding car or the funeral car is concerned.
Thank you.
It was the wider issue that I was
Thank you.
addressing.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you, Councillor Franco. I see there are no other lights on, so you may return to the gallery. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I now call upon John Joyce. And John, you're probably aware of the process, so if I could ask for your name, suburb, and it's stated on the submission form that you're against the officer recommendation, so I ask that you please clarify that during your presentation. Thank you.
I am a parishioner at Our Lady of Victories, and I reside at Middle Camberwell. John Joyce is my name, and I've been on holiday over most of January. So when I returned, we're going to go to Mass, I think just we arrived back on the 29th of January. We were stunned to see the road closed. So I'm not observant to all that went on. I was relaxing on holiday. My wife is disabled, and perhaps if I read first what I wrote to council, and then I'll elaborate further on that. Dear team members, I visited the council chambers today to express my objection to the closure of Reserve Road, Camberwell. I'm a regular attendee along with my disabled wife at Our Lady of Victories Basilica on either a Saturday night at 6 p.m. or Sunday morning at 10 a.m. We invariably park in the safe and spacious parking area in Reserve Road, right next to the Basilica. Burke Road is far more dangerous and constricted for car parking. Many other churchgoers also park their cars in this road to attend Mass on Saturday evening and Sunday morning. There are no school attendees using Reserve Road at these times. Surely Burundara Council understand it would be a disaster for us and other elderly and disabled churchgoers if they were to close the safe car parking areas along Reserve Road next to the Basilica. Please consider speed humps or a reduced speed limit or an alternative to provide safety for school children crossing Reserve Road. Yours faithfully. Now, my wife was rather stunned, and so was I, to see the temporary road closure signs when we arrived back from Lorne. We did come through the junction, which is very inconvenient because we used to come off Camberwell Road from the east, and Reserve Road approach was ideal coming from Camberwell Road. Now, I endeavoured to park my car there in Burke Road. I have a BMW, and its length extends beyond the two white marks on the car parks there at the moment. And it's dangerous when you open your door when cars are coming past you all the time. So it's without question, using Reserve Road was the answer for us. A lot of other parishioners have expressed similar concerns to me about closing Reserve Road. I think it's a disaster to do that. I really do. You're talking about danger. You've shifted the danger to Burke Road, if you're parking on Burke Road, to those trying to use the church. There are no such things as 10-minute pickups and stays concerning us. We are there for the hour. And I would like the thing to remain open. So I think that's all I have to say there. We'll add a few more things. The Basilica is an iconic structure. I'd hate to think that lack of usage...
Sorry, if you could conclude with
Yes.
one sentence, thank you.
Yes, righto. It's an iconic structure. We don't want it to turn into a retail establishment if people can't access the church and numbers fall off. It would be a disaster. It's something that Camberwell should treasure. You want to have a look at it inside. It's ideal for everyone to have a look at.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and
sorry,
Councillor.
I'll just check. We do have Councillor Pattis' light on. Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, may I call you John?
Yes, by all means.
John, just the same as with the previous speaker, I just want to remind the speakers that what the officers here are recommending is going from a temporary solution where the whole of Reserve Road is closed to a temporary solution where only part of Reserve Road is closed and providing more parking. I'm assuming you're in favour of improving the parking. Acknowledging that what we're trying to do here is get a more permanent solution in the long run. Okay, so we're going to, we want a temporary solution until we find a permanent solution. And the previous speaker talked about speed humps and lowering the speed limit and looking at school times. Is there anything else that you would like us to look at in terms of possibly a more permanent solution? I know ideally you'd like it to be open, but is there anything else maybe that you can think of that might, that we should be looking at in terms of a permanent solution?
Look, I'll have to live with what is there. When I came back, I think there was no attachment 5 at the time. It was closed both ends. And that to me was a complete disaster. Now, I'd have to accept what's there at the moment under sufferance. I'd prefer to be able to come through from Camberwell Road. It's safer. I don't have to come through the junction, go in and out and so on. So I accept what you have at the moment under sufferance, but I prefer the road to remain open and you put in devices, crossings and speed limits, whatever you like, to provide for safety of the children. Because I think you reversed the onus onto us when I came back. You put us under danger.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Franco, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you. I want to ask the question that Councillor Pattis commenced with, but moved to a broader question. But the recommendation in the officer's report is a temporary change to a temporary arrangement. And do you want to comment on your view of the recommendation of the report versus what's currently there, apart from the broader long-term?
I'm afraid that often temporary becomes permanent. I have to accept what is there at the moment under sufferance.
So you'd prefer the current arrangements as is remain rather than the temporary arrangements proposed in the officer's report?
I think we're reverting from attachment 4 to attachment 5, is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Well, attachment 5 is certainly better than attachment 4.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Sorry, if you wouldn't mind waiting, Mr Joyce. Councillor Nolan also has a question for you.
Thank you, John, for speaking. I've got a question for you. If there were disability parking spots available in Reserve Road as per attachment 5 with the barrier moved further along the tennis courts, and you were able to access disability car parks at the weekend, would that satisfy, how would that seem to you?
Look, before these temporary closures, we used the disabled car parks that are there at the moment. We used them, but we accessed from Camberwell Road. And it was nice and safe, and we could do that. And there are a lot of fellow parishioners endeavouring to come into that area as well. Now, there didn't seem to be much emphasis in the correspondence about the needs for those going to Mass on a Saturday evening and a Sunday morning, but there are heaps of people wanting to use that. Now, we don't want the numbers to go down. We don't have to find another church to go to, and we want to remain safe. We'll accept what you've got there at the moment under sufferance.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Does that address your question?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Joyce. You may return to the gallery. I now call upon Ruth Crawley. Good evening, Ruth. As I've said to each presenter, if you could please just state your name and suburb, and on the submission form, you've marked as no, you don't support the officer recommendation. Is that correct?
No.
All right. Please proceed with your presentation with your name first. Thank you.
My name is Ruth Crawley. I live in Deep Dean and I'm the chairperson of Camberwell Uniting Church congregation. Our church was very disappointed that the decision to temporarily close Reserve Road was made with a total lack of community consultation. We believe the closure will have negative consequences for the school children, poor outcome for businesses in Reserve, Camberwell and Burke Roads, including the Burundara Council, and disadvantages for the wider Camberwell community. Camberwell Uniting Church is a people-focused community organisation. Some members of the groups using our buildings rely on vehicle transport to get to the church. Previously, they have been able to park either in the limited church premises or in Reserve Road. They do this as the carers for the very young are required to come with support equipment like pushers and carry bags, and many of the older people have mobility issues requiring them to use walking sticks or frames, and quite a few are unable to walk quickly, walk long distances or negotiate uneven ground. Parking in front of the church in Camberwell Road is problematic due to the intersection with Butler Street directly opposite. The safety of our people is thus severely compromised by the loss of previously close and easy access parking and the lack of availability of an alternative nearby, clearly discriminating against the aged, the very young and disabled groups which make up our community. We are always concerned about the safety of all those in the wider community who are vulnerable, and we acknowledge that the changes could have been made to previously existing arrangements in Reserve Road, which could improve the safety of children at Camberwell Primary School. However, we believe that the current temporary arrangement doesn't address the basic issue of child safety, but merely redirects it to Camberwell Road, which exposes more children to far greater danger. Reserve Road is a public road and a community asset. It assists in the traffic management and eases congestion at the junction at all times, providing benefit to many local businesses and organisations, including Camberwell Uniting. Closing the road and directing all school traffic to use Camberwell or Inglesby roads is counterproductive, greatly increasing chances of accidents, particularly in winter when the vehicle traffic will increase significantly and parents and children will need to navigate wet and dangerous conditions among cars, trucks and trams amidst a raft of confusing road signage. Whilst we support the recommendation before you this evening, as it will provide extra parking, a reasoned case can be made for a more proven, less disruptive, equitable and community-wide approach to the management of this issue, for example, by installing speed humps or some other traffic management tool in Reserve Road, and for the school to continue having crossing supervisors in place. This will foster road safety awareness and minimise fear in the children. In our view, any perceived advantage in closing off Reserve Road is far outweighed by the loss of value and benefit of the road to the whole community and the greater risk it poses to the school children.
Thank you very much. Right on 3 minutes. Well done. Now, just check. It doesn't appear that any councillor... Oh, sorry, Councillor Franco has a question.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask the same question again. The officer's report is recommending opening a portion of Reserve as a temporary arrangement in relation to the current temporary arrangements. And would you like to comment on the recommendation of the report that's before us councillors today?
I've done that, and I've said we're supportive.
Oh, okay.
We're supportive of the recommendation before you this evening.
Thank you. Apologies.
Thank you very much. You may return. Oh, Councillor Sinfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Mrs Crawley. I'm wondering when you found out about this meeting being scheduled for tonight and what consultation you had?
Late last week, Thursday I think it was, and people from the church have spoken to council officers after the last decision was made.
If I may clarify, Chair, so you found out from the council staff or through the community that this meeting was scheduled and this agenda item was listed?
Sorry, I didn't quite...
Did you find out from the council staff that this agenda item was listed for tonight, or did you find out through the community?
We found out, we received an email.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no other lights on. You may return to the gallery. Thank you. I now call Nicole Lindemann. And to assist, the next presenter will be Kerry Daly. Nicole, now if you could please state your name, your suburb, and on the submission form you indicate that you do support the officer recommendation. Is that correct? Yes.
Correct.
Please proceed.
Hello, I'm Nicole Lindeman. I live in Hawthorn East and have done so for almost 30 years. I have indicated that I support the officer's recommendation. I am very mindful of, I have prepared a written speech, but I feel like everything within that speech has already been covered by previous speakers. But I would like to reiterate that since the previous meeting in December and the decision to temporarily close the road, we have had numerous meetings with many of these key stakeholders within this group. I am representing Camberwell Junction Tennis Club, so we are noted in the report as a key stakeholder in this Reserve Road precinct. And I feel like much of what I wanted to say has already been said, but what I would like to say is that I think some of the speakers this evening are still talking about the decision that was made in December in terms of temporarily closing the road. And I think the reason for that is that there was little to no consultation about that decision, that people have been so affronted by the fact that it has happened. The notification to not just key stakeholders, but many businesses, residents, was just, really delayed. And I feel like we're all feeling pretty disappointed about that decision. I think we are all very torn between offering support for this recommendation this evening, whilst it will provide additional parking, which has been identified as a key problem and a key concern for many of us. I think our concern with providing support for that is that we don't want that to be the end game. We are all very concerned about the congestion and the effect that congestion of moving the traffic from Reserve Road to other locations, the effect that is having on businesses within the area, and also the safety of certainly of the participants at the tennis club. We have many children, participants in coaching programs, members of the club that are being affected by this road closure. So it will definitely improve our situation, and I am very grateful to council officers' work over this short period to bring this recommendation to council. I think they've done a brilliant job to gather all the information and bring this together. But I support this, but I don't want this to be the end game. I support further traffic management options be explored. I am concerned that the draft plan that is being worked on currently is a draft plan for the permanent closure of Reserve Road. I am concerned that is what many people are calling it. I don't think it should be a draft plan for the permanent closure. I think it should be a draft plan for the precinct, because it's almost like the end outcome is being determined by
Could I ask, could you
name.
please just conclude? Thank you very much.
Look, so I'd like to confirm that we do support this recommendation, but it is partial support in that we don't support the permanent closure of the road.
I think you've made that very clear. Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor or Mayor Tawney has her light on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for coming and presenting. And I remember you presenting last time too. So do you think that this will resolve the tennis club issues with access and parking? Can you foresee any other problems?
I am concerned about a cul-de-sac coming off Burke Road. It will certainly offer 23 spaces of parking that we don't have now. So to say that I don't support that, I think would be very short-sighted. It definitely will. I hope that in conjunction with this recommendation, if it is approved, that the parking restriction, paid parking and the changes to the parking that were made as a result of the closure are maintained, because they are very important also. We've still lost I don't know how many, what my maths is like, but if these 23 come back, there's still a number that have been lost. So I think, yes, it will help, but I am concerned about two-way traffic in that area and what it will look like at school drop-off and pick-up times.
Thank you. And there are no other lights on. You may return to the gallery. I'll now call upon Kerry Daly. Good evening.
Good evening.
And if you could just start with your name, suburb, and it's indicated here that you do support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. My name's Kerry Daly. I live in Malvern, but I manage the Camberwell Junction shopping precinct for the Camberwell Traders Association and have done for 27 years. I've been asked to speak on behalf of the Camberwell Traders Association to express our partial support for the officer's recommendation. The relationship between Camberwell Traders and the City of Boroondara has been a long and successful history. We believe this has been based on mutual respect and recognition of the value of such a relationship. Therefore, it came as a significant surprise to us that Reserve Road Camberwell was closed with minimum notice to stakeholders and others affected parties. The Camberwell Traders Association was not advised directly and not in time to notify our 720 members. Our key concerns are that we're not being aware of the alternative options or traffic management impact studies prior to this going ahead, and consultation was limited to the immediate area, though its impact will be felt across the junction. The loss of any car parks in Reserve Road has a direct cumulative impact on the parking in the precinct. It's on top of the loss of the car parks from the previous Inglesby Road car park site, and this is in clear conflict with Boroondara's Economic Development Strategy Action Plan, which seeks to improve provision of parking. We believe the redirecting of traffic into surrounding roads such as Campbell Road, Burke Road, Inglesby Road and residential streets will create further traffic congestion and increase competition for parking. The officer's recommendation for two-way cul-de-sacs in Reserve Road will, we believe, generate chaos and congestion that will affect surrounding streets, particularly if right-hand turns in or out of Reserve Road into Burke Road are allowed. However, as it reinstates some parking spaces, we offer partial support. Our preferred position would be for full reopening of Reserve Road and installation of safety measures that benefit all pedestrians. It's a fact that students only cross the road at limited designated times and for less than 200 odd school days. We believe a range of other options should be explored, as mentioned before, things like bollards, crossing, widening fencing, perhaps even large gates that could go across the road when the children needed to be passing through. We believe there are adverse implications to pedestrian safety by shifting movement onto the busy thoroughfares. Therefore, we question the value of this action regarding any closure as measured against wider community consequences. It's our firm belief that reducing parking availability and increasing traffic congestion are a deterrent to retail and business and therefore not in the best interest of the local economy. Therefore, we request that Council reconsider overall the closure of Reserve Road Camberwell and consider other traffic management measures to address the usage and safety needs of its stakeholders. And if I wasn't clear, I do accept the position you're saying that we need to state that we are in support of it as it stands, but also the opportunity to reiterate that we don't believe it's the right outcome.
Look, thank you. And again, you've made that very clear. And well done, under 3 minutes. Thank you. Now, I do not see any lights on, so it doesn't appear that any councillor has any question, but thank you very much for your presentation.
That's interesting. They're not concerned about the business impact. Thank you.
I now call Jeff Ferguson. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. McFerguson. If you could please state your name, suburb, and on the form you do have yes that you support the officer recommendation. If you could just confirm that, please.
Thank you. Jeff McPherson, and I live in Glen Iris. Could I ask first, I hope all councillors have a paper copy of my submission, please. Yeah. I support the officer report to Council because it includes a positive response by Council or by Boroondara to the need for parking availability at the Burke Road end of Reserve Road, and it's shown in attachment 5. I wish to make a further suggestion regarding the placement of the barrier at the Camberwell end of the Reserve Road to create a similar pocket of parking in an area that appears to be a sort of no man's land. It's a waste of space. The key points I want to make are the marked area, and I've marked, you'll see I've overtaken I've got bigger arrows than you. The marked area has 1790-degree parking places in parallel with the blank wall of the school gymnasium. These spaces are presently inaccessible and do not abut any part of the schoolyard. And you'll see the photo, which was taken yesterday, it was empty. There are also several parallel parking spaces at the south side of that section of the road, and I'll take that up. My suggestion is that the barrier be moved closer to the marked school crossing to enable access to at least 14 of the 1790-degree parking spaces, and turning space could be created by blotting out, if that's the right word, of the parallel parking spaces on the south side of the road. There is a precedent for support of point 4 above because this sort of parking arrangement is already in place on the Camberwell Road side of the existing barrier, where there are 4, might be 5, 90-degree nose-in parking spaces. In this latter case, drivers already simply reverse out of the space and turn right to exit the Camberwell Road. It works. And also a further suggestion to achieve a better balance between the needs of the school and Burundara residents who use adjacent properties, I suggest that the temporary barriers be replaced by simple boom gates that could be operated by the crossing supervisor at 8 and 4. That is, the road is closed to traffic only during school hours, and I've said something about that below. And I've included a photo of the sort of boom gate I have in mind that I've seen down on Brighton Beach.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I don't see any lights on. I don't believe councillors have any questions, but thank you very much. You may return to the gallery.
Thank you.
I will now call upon Jane Pennington, and followed by Jane, we have Robin Nasu. Jane, if you could just please, for the record, state your name, suburb and your support or non-support. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jane Pennington and I live in Kew and have lived here all my life. I am the leader of Sing Australia Camberwell and speak on their behalf. We do support this motion, very similar to Nicole's view, and I'll give you a little bit of background about Sing Australia. So Sing Australia has been using the Uniting Church and Reserve Road car parking for more than 20 years, and our group has over 80 members. We rehearse every Tuesday morning for 2 hours. The age group of the members is predominantly over 70, with many over 80. Many of these members have mobility issues and hence depend on private cars for transport. Members have been parking in Reserve Road, which was very convenient for them, as they could park and walk only a very short distance to the venue. I appreciate the council has changed the parking in Camberwell Road to provide 3-hour parking spaces. However, this does not replace the total 79 spaces which have been lost due to the closure of Reserve Road. Additionally, these spaces are under great pressure from others using Camberwell Road. Sing Australia Camberwell provides a community service as we sing at various facilities, usually once a week, including Kew Gardens, St Vincent's Aged Care, Camberwell Senior Citizens, Rylands, Balwyn Evergreen, Headley Sutton, The Heights, Aveo Concierge Balwyn. We also support the Camberwell RSL and sing at Anzac Day and Remembrance Day. It would be a very great shame if this parking situation impacts on our ability to rehearse on a Tuesday morning through members not being able to attend due to lack of parking facilities. This in turn would impact on our ability to provide this community service at these venues. Additionally, rehearsals provide a community connections for our members, which is vital for their mental health and well-being. Many members are now single, and I know they greatly look forward to singing on Tuesday mornings and often follow rehearsals by going out for lunch and patronising local cafes. Their dependence on these connections was shown during COVID lockdowns when they could not meet, and many members suffered due to isolation and loneliness. All members totally support the need for children's safety, but it would appear that there are other traffic management solutions which could be implemented and would suit all users of the facilities in this area.
Thank you very much. And might I say I've had the pleasure of hearing sing on numerous occasions, and thank you for all that you do for the benefit of community.
Thank you.
Now, I do not see any lights on, so it doesn't appear we have any questions. Thank you for your presentation. And I just want to remind members of the gallery there is water there as well, so please, if you are thirsty, help yourself. I now call upon Robin Nasu. Thank you. And please excuse me if I have pronounced your surname incorrectly.
Good evening. My name is Robin Nash and I reside in Surrey Hills. I'm the treasurer of the Probus Club, which meets for monthly morning meetings in the Uniting Church Hall. The average age of our members is mid-80s, some are in their 90s, and many have mobility issues, making car parking in close proximity to the venue essential. On behalf of the club, I give support to the tabled proposal to reopen the Burke Road end of Reserve Road, as it will return 23 of the 66 spaces lost upon closure of the road. Whilst there have been some modification to the parking arrangement on Camberwell and Burke Roads, it will only be a matter of time before the shoppers of Camberwell realise the availability of these non-ticketed 3-hour spaces, and they will cease to be available for our members as required. For some of our elderly or disabled drivers, finding a parking spot further away than they are used to requires them to navigate a longer trek to the church hall. The removal of the parking spots has repercussions for many community groups. I believe there are around 15 of them, which were given scant consideration prior to the closure of the road. The safety and well-being of all members of the community are important, the elderly as well as the young. Our Probus Club provides an important social outlet for our members, and the more difficult and hazardous it is for them to access our meeting point, the more likely they are to decide, to the detriment of their health, that it is too difficult to attend. Reserve Road should never have been closed. There were viable options available through traffic management that could have been put in place without impacting so severely on the many non-school users of the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, well under 3 minutes. Councillors, I see Councillor Friend Vera, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I realise I probably should have asked this as a standing question of everybody who spoke. How many members are in the Probus and how many attend the monthly?
At the moment, there are just over 50 members. We need to grow that membership to remain viable. And at our last meeting on Friday, there were about 38 who attended.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Robin. Have you thought about, do you have any suggestions as to what the alternate traffic calming measures you would like to see would be?
Like the other speakers, I think some road humps. I believe that reducing the speed from discussions with council officers is not possible on a public road below 40. I believe that was the case. But I think the main thing is school management of the situation. I've worked in schools for over 30 years in the operational side, and I know that it was just a matter of having teachers do what was required to get the children safely across the road. You know, I'd very much put it back on the school to improve the arrangements that they obviously didn't have in place at the time to consider it was not safely managed. But yes, certainly road humps and decreasing the size of the road at the point of crossing, fencing. There seem to be a number of options that could have been a starting point.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Nash. I now call upon Tony McGilroy. Tony, are you here? Oh, thank you. Good evening. If you could just state your name and suburb, please. And it's marked here that you are in support of the officer recommendation. If you could please just confirm that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Councillors, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tony McElroy. I'm a resident of Kew and I'm a member of the Parish Governance Committee. And you may not be aware that the parish now comprises the former parishes of Camberwell, Deepdean, Balwyn, Surrey Hills and Wattle Park. And I'm purely here to convey that the parish supports the recommendation before you this evening and is grateful for the fact that you have considered our operational needs in respect of Our Lady of Victories.
Thank you very much. That was short, sweet and very much on time. I do not see any lights on, so thank you for your presentation. Now we have two more presenters that have come in a little bit late this evening. I will call Lachlan McRae. Lachlan, are you here? Good evening. If you could state your name, suburb, and it's indicated here that you do not support the officer recommendation.
That's correct.
All right.
Yeah, my name is Lachlan. I live in Camberwell. I do not support it. Myself as a civil engineer...
Sorry, your surname or just...
Lachlan McRae.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Do not support it. Myself as a resident of Camberwell and also as an engineer that's worked on major projects, I think the council's approach to this has been quite poor. In the media, you vocalised dissatisfaction with the state government coming through and putting planning laws in place, and yet when it comes to the own community that you're set to represent, you just come in here and steamroll and say we're going to close the road without much notification. The plan's put in place, reading it, you've spent $22,000 so far, and I'm having trouble understanding why 2 VMS boards, 4 barriers, some water would cost that much when on average it would cost maybe $2,000 a month for 1 VMS board, and now they're no longer there. With regards to the temporary closure, I appreciate that safety is of concern, but those barriers are not rated for vehicles in the application that you're using it for. For normal projects that we use it on, when a vehicle hits them, they actually become a projectile and they're more a hazard to pedestrians and those nearby. I've called the council last week and said concrete bollards should be, Kelly blocks should be used, and there was an issue of access getting him in there. That's not really a big issue. You can use a forklift. With regards to going forward, we've turned the road that used to be 2 ways. We've closed off the end. Now it's 1 way. It's a constant decrease of the quality of service that's going on with that road. This, in terms of the temporary solution, I think traffic management is an easier solution, and the solution put forward doesn't seem to have some type of management plan that I can find online, and it seems to be a PowerPoint markup and not a proper traffic guidance scheme. I haven't been able to find a response from the Victorian Department of Transport with regards to the changes that have been put forward. We've put a hole in asphalt to put a bollard in there where you can just drive around it. And we're having to accommodate the school that's run by the state government. I understand that there's things that go on that allow the state government to come to yourselves, but what about Glenferrie Primary? What about Kew? What about Auburn? What about the other schools that have access through the area? It seems we're getting a decreased quality of service through here for a very small window that could very easily be mitigated with traffic management through personnel. And a long-term solution, if it's to make the safety of the children, then it should just be a stop and go. We're making something far worse overall for a very small stakeholder on the grand scheme of things. That's all I had to say with it.
Thank you very much. Now, I do not see any councillor lights on, but thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
You may go back to the gallery. Now, I now call Thomas Bennett. Good evening, Thomas. If you could start with your name and suburb, please. On the submission form, it indicates you do support the officer recommendation.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Thomas Bennett. I'm a Hawthorne East resident, parent of 2 children at Camberwell Primary School, also on the school council as treasurer, and I'm an engineer, but I won't talk any engineering things to you tonight.
Could I ask you just come a little bit closer to the microphone or pull it in closer to you? That's much better, thank you.
Do you need me to repeat anything?
No, I think we're right, keep going.
Thank you, councillors and experts, for the opportunity to speak today. My name, as I said, is Thomas Bennett. I support the proposal. It's clear from the discussion that many of the same concerns have been raised in previous meetings. However, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the positive changes that have occurred since then. The goal of creating a safer environment for our students and family has been successfully achieved, and the school community is deeply appreciative of these improvements. The closure has been a resounding success. The school is enjoying the new arrangement. Over 100 students have signed up to the walking bus, and I myself am a bus driver and walk 3 families to school. This gives us a chance to practice road safety and also demonstrate strong community support for safer, active transport options. Students now have a safer and more enjoyable space to walk, ride and play before, during and after school. Parents have adopted well to the changes, and the parking adjustments have been a great first step in improving traffic flow and safety. Looking ahead, I hope the Camberwell community continues to build on this progress. We see this as just the beginning of a safer and more connected, greener community, and we are eager to explore further improvements that benefit both students and the wider community. Thank you again for your time and considerations.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I do not see any... Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Lachlan, for that presentation. Just a quick question for the benefit of us all. How does the school bus walking program work? Perhaps you can elaborate on that.
So local families, I'll give you my example. We one of 3 families within a couple of streets of each other, and the message went out via the community school groups where they said, you know, who wants to participate, and then we sort of got a list of people and their addresses, and then we sort of located people that are close together. We put them in contact, and then we said, there was, a lot of organisation goes on, but you said, what days can you do it? You know, we do it Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We pick all the kids up. We have a meeting spot. And then one family member, you know, myself and my wife, for example, would take the kids. There's 5 of them in the group. We walk to the school. We stop the stops. We walk across. We push the buttons. We talk about road safety. We end up at the school. We get there probably 5-10 minutes early. They have a little bit of play on the open road. And then, I head off to work and they head into school. So, very civilised, really. So it actually is quite good. One parent has found that she doesn't need to hire any before care because she now is able to use this walking bus. So it's a good use for everyone.
One further question, if I may. Could you explain for the benefit of us councillors how the parking arrangements might typically work, or perhaps drop-off arrangements for school parents?
Yep, okay. So I guess obviously walking bus we just spoke about, so there are parents that will just walk by themselves that won't live close by. Others may ride bikes, and you see those electric bikes with the people on the back, so people will do that method. There are car parks. There's obviously the one just behind us here, the one near the pet barn, and there's also obviously streets just sort of outside the precinct area. So I myself, living in Hawthorne East, I don't cross the junction because it's quite complicated, and the days that I do need to drive, I'll sort of park a few streets away and walk in. So I find that quite easy. There's traffic guards on the major intersections. So I think everyone's managing, and I don't think the number of people that would have normally parked through that street are that affected because there are other options, and that time of day, we make it work.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Franco.
No need to ask.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rubicki.
Thank you, Mr Bennett. Having heard from other community organisations here today, and many of them have put forward other traffic measures, traffic management measures, do you have any opinion on whether those measures might suffice in place of the temporary closure?
I have considered this a long time. So this has been going on, an ongoing issue for the school for 5 years possibly, I'm not sure, but I've sort of only recently joined the council. And I've looked at this a lot. I am an engineer, so of course I wanted to look at the information and try and work it out myself. And I thought, no, this is not the place for me to have input. We have an expert here this is his job to manage the traffic constraints, and there are a lot of constraints. So I spent a long time with Jim, and we went through all the different options with the school, and we talked about, picking up rubbish, and if there's an ambulance, or if a hearse or whatever that needs to come to the churches, and how we could get around different parking options. And originally there was sort of a roundabout option, but that doesn't. We don't quite have the space. So there are a lot of options, and it really needs to be done by an expert. Like we've talked about, partial closing the road, and then there's the human error that can come if people think the road's going to be open. It's not. Speed bumps, sure, that might slow the road down, but it doesn't really stop cars going through when the kids are wanting to go back and forth. So I think this is a good opportunity to really move this, make a greener community. If we close off that section, I like the idea of bringing it in for Burke Road, so you can have those additional parking, and that'll help the tennis club and also the church goers. So I think there's a lot of room to really make this perfect for everyone. So I have heard everyone's concerns, and I think everyone hopefully can be satisfied.
Thank you. And Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr Bennett, I may have got this wrong, so I apologise if I haven't understood the initiatives that you've implemented that you said, like the walking bus. But Is there any reason why any of these initiatives couldn't have been implemented before the temporary closure?
No, that's quite interesting. Before COVID, there were walking buses, and that really was a popular option for students back then. But obviously, during COVID, things really got shaken up, and I think a lot of the parents that had done that and been doing that had moved on. So I think we missed that next generation who really suffered through those early days of COVID and missed, a lot of homeschooling where they didn't have that foundation to bring it in. So I think there's a really good opportunity to bring it back and, get the community walking again.
So you could have, even if council had decided not to temporarily close this road, you could have implemented all of these safety initiatives anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a great initiative and a great push for us to do it.
Yeah, but I mean, do you acknowledge that the school has to take some responsibility here? That you've got initiatives that you've implemented now that you're claiming, these are initiatives that you could have done before.
Well, I think it's a multi-part thing. Like, not everyone takes the walking bus. There are people that are outside of caption that do need to drive. So there are always going to be parents that will drive. And, the walking bus, we don't do the kids 5 days a week, twice a day. So it is, even for myself who does the walking bus, it's a couple of days a week and it helps out. But it's not every day. Like our neighbours, they don't come one day because they've got tennis early. So they'll probably drive to the tennis club. So I don't think walking to school is not the solution, if that's what you're sort of aiming at.
So thank you. Are there any initiatives that you've implemented since the temporary closure that are new initiatives that you couldn't have done before?
I guess the drop-off on the other roads, so we're putting a teacher at, I can't remember the name, it's not Burke, it's the other one, I forget the name, sorry, but we have a teacher position there in the morning who's helping kids get off the road, because with the 10-minute parking, we couldn't have done that before, so there is an option to sort of do a kiss and ride at the front of the school, which they can now do that we couldn't do before, which is a good initiative.
Because the road wasn't closed before?
More that the 10-minute parking wasn't there, and so you didn't have that option to, if people parking there, it'd be for 8 hours or 4 hours or whatever the time was.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
That was the shorter duration.
Thank you, Councillor Pattis. Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you. Through you, just wondering what sort of engineer you are?
Long story, I studied mechanical, but I'm working in civil now.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I just wonder if you'd like to comment on what the mood in the school community is. We received lots of concerns prior to the closure and significant concerns.
Yeah, I'd almost say joyous. I think obviously there was a bit of apprehension when people got the news. A lot of the community probably didn't know exactly when it was happening. We talked about it for a long time. So I think there was probably a little bit of, is this actually happening? Anticipation. Then when they saw it was closed, a bit of adjustment. But overall, you see kids come out of school, and it's probably not a good road safety example, but one kid, ran into the road and just laid down and was just loving being out and not having to worry about cars. So I think overall it's very positive and the family's very happy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There are no more lights on, so you may return to the gallery. Thank you. Now, I will now call upon Mr. Hondurakis to address matters arising.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might start off with the parking. Reserve Road comprised 79 parking bays. With the current proposal that we've implemented, 13 bays are retained at the Campbell Road end. Attachment 5 basically will lead to an increase of 23 parking bays at the Burke Road end. All in all, there'll be 36 spaces and potentially a loss of 43 spaces in Reserve Road. Just want to talk about some of the changes that we've actually made in the precinct. We've freed up parking on Camberwell Road. There used to be a section of all-day ticket parking which was fully utilised, and we had a one-hour ticket parking section which was very underutilised. That's all changed. We've incorporated 5-minute parking and 10-minute parking and put in 3-hour parking in between pick-up drop-off periods. We've also put in 2 dedicated 10-minute drop-off bays in front of the Uniting Church to cater for the quick drop-offs for the various community groups that rely on activities throughout the day and weekend. For Burke Road, we've removed the ticket parking and put in a combination of 2-hour and 3-hour parking. We've managed to find an additional 4 spaces in Burke Road outside the Basilica by virtue of a tram stop that was removed 18 months ago. So we've actually got an additional 4 spaces through there. And there used to be an afternoon no stopping zone on Burke Road, midway between St John's Anglican Church and Reserve Road, and that's been removed, and we now have parking through there. There's 25 spaces that have been changed in Burke Road and 31 on Camberwell Road, which is essentially 56 spaces. And we've used that to mitigate the loss of 43 spaces in Reserve Road, assuming that option 5 is endorsed by council. What's also relevant is the 2 Uniting Church car parks, total of 16 spaces. One actually has 7, the other one actually has 9. Camberwell Primary School used to lease 5 spaces in one of the car parks. They now no longer lease those spaces, and that is available for the Uniting Church and the community groups. So there have been a number of changes made in the precinct to respond to the key issues that have been raised. We've also created an additional disability parking bay in Reserve Road at the Camberwell Road end. And look, we've been monitoring this on a daily basis. We do that because it's conveniently located to council. I've got officers out there morning, afternoon, even during the day. I've personally been out there probably a good 20 odd times since we've implemented those parking changes. And we continue to review and talk to the key stakeholders, and we're happy to refine the restrictions as well. I think it's fair to say that if you walk down Camberwell Road during the day, it is very, very different to what it used to be. And we don't just rely on Camberwell Road. We've got Inglesby Road. We've got the Butler Street car park. We've got the Inglesby Road car park. We've got Burke Road. So there is parking available in the precinct. What we don't have is a whole lot of parking directly in front of the Uniting Church or in front of the school. So we manage the parking as best as we can. I just want to respond to some of the specific issues that have been raised by some of the speakers. Mrs Buckingham, the Scottish dancing activity, nighttime activity on a Thursday night and Saturday night. Parking at that time is not at capacity. There is plenty of parking available at those periods. Whether it's on Camberwell Road, Burke Road, even the 13 spaces currently on Reserve Road, Butler Street car park, Inglesby Road car park. So parking is readily available at night on a Thursday night and Saturday night in that part of the junction. Mr Hickey raised the issue of safety in Inglesby Road. Yes, we've made some changes to the parking in Inglesby Road, but that's been on the school side. So we've created some additional 5-minute parking that for pick-up drop-off. The children don't have to cross the road. It is there to minimise crossing, and it is currently being used relatively well. Safety crossing Camberwell Road. The Butler Street car park has been used by school parents for many, many years. We've got a 40k speed limit on Camberwell Road. We've got a school crossing supervisor there morning and afternoon. We've made changes to the laneway as well, so there is no traffic within the laneway. And it is a good access route to and from the school. So we would actually have a different view, and we would say that we are providing a good level of safety. There was an issue of impact on parking for weddings and funerals. Again, typically weddings are on the weekend, notably Saturdays. Since the closure, we've opened up the road on 2 occasions for 2 weddings, and we've been monitoring the parking associated with those weddings, including Saturday and 2 Saturdays ago. Again, parking is not at capacity on a weekend, so there are parking opportunities available in the precinct, and certainly if attachment 5 is supported, there will be an additional 23 spaces directly in front of the Basilica which can be used. Mr. Joyce raised the issue of disability parking, and it's a very, very good point. If attachment 5 is supported by council, out of those 23 spaces, 2 of them are dedicated disability parking bays. So there will be access to those 2 disability parking bays. If there is an issue or a need for more disability parking bays, that is something that can be reviewed, and we have the flexibility to increase the number of disability parking bays. What I should also point out is that sometimes there is a concern with not having enough time to park with a disability parking bay. So if you can't actually find a disability parking bay and you do have the permit, you can park in any other bay for twice the permitted time limit. So that gives flexibility in that regard. For those elderly people that will have trouble walking and there is no disability parking, we've got some convenient pick-up drop-off bays as well at the Burke Road end that would assist in that regard. With respect to sort of traffic management sort of treatments in Reserve Road, the issue there is potentially you could put speed humps in, put in a lower speed limit, but you still have children crossing the road. We had in excess of 400 based on historical surveys between 9:30 and 3 p.m. And that would have increased by virtue of the opening of the new playground back on the 20th of November 2023. So it doesn't actually address the concern with children crossing and integrating between the 2 campuses. Also, there is an issue with the 90-degree parking in Reserve Road. There have been 4 incidents over the years where vehicles have actually entered the bays and have hit the school buildings on 3 occasions, and in November actually hit the fencing on the playground at the west end of Burke Road. There was also a near miss with a child crossing Reserve Road. So there are some issues there that would not be addressed if we were to look at humps and a lower speed limit. With respect to the removal of the ticket parking on Burke Road and Camberwell Road, there are no intentions to reinstate it. It is something that can be considered, but at this point in time, that is not what is intended. What we're trying to do is manage the parking and provide a good level of service to the community, and that would mean retaining or not reinstating those fees. With respect to creating 2 cul-de-sacs, we don't want to encourage any school pick-up drop-off activity in Reserve Road. And we don't have any short-term parking restrictions such as 2-minute, 5-minute or 10-minute parking in Reserve Road at the Camberwell Road end. And if attachment 5 is supported and we open up Reserve Road at Burke Road end, the existing 2-minute parking and the existing quarter-P parking would be removed, and we would be providing medium-term parking to better suit the needs of not only the Basilica, the tennis club, but the general sort of community. So we do not want any pick-up, drop-off activity in Reserve Road. And that's been made clear to the school, and what we're finding on our daily inspections at the Camberwell Road end is we've got a little bit more activity in the morning, around about 10 parents, carers entering Reserve Road and doing the turnaround. In the afternoon, it's around about half a dozen. We've just started to undertake enforcement, and we're expecting that to drop down significantly. And let's bear in mind that previously we had 120 in the morning and 150 plus in the afternoon using Reserve Road. So the numbers have gone right down. Mr. Bennett raised the issue of the walking school buses. It's quite noticeable out there, and the groups of children walking to and from school. I only hope that can be sustained, but there seems to be quite a bit of excitement and amongst the school kids, and there's a number of different routes to and from the school that we've observed. With respect to cul-de-sacs and access and congestion, we're looking at, well, at the Camberwell Road end, there are no stopping bans. At the Burke Road end, we will have a greater level of no stopping bans, given that we would potentially have some larger vehicles through there as well. So we're confident we can manage that, and we don't want to encourage pick-up, drop-off activity through there. I think that's about all I've got to say, and happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you, Mr Hondarakis. Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question to which I hope the answer will help whoever moves the motion, maybe amend or add some more, some outcomes. Mr Hondarakis, what, in your opinion, would be, assuming the objective here is to come up with a more permanent outcome where all of the stakeholders have been properly consulted and they feel that they've had an opportunity to be properly consulted, because that certainly came through tonight as an important message. What would be a suitable time frame whereby we could arrive, that we should allow to come up with a more permanent solution, allowing for adequate consultation?
You can ask that. Me too.
Can you give us some guidance in terms of maybe framing something as a point number 5?
Through you, Madam Chair. With attachment 5, the intention is to implement that in the very short term. As soon as we receive approval from the Department of Transport and Planning, so we've got the approval, but we need the paperwork signed for construction purposes, so we can look at those changes in the short term.
Sorry, I just saw our CEO's light on. Did you wish to speak first, or?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to suggest that much has been placed this evening in asking questions on the temporary nature of this current proposal. And I think that on that basis, our community would be expecting some commitment to an investigation, which might be part of a permanent solution. And what I was going to suggest to you is that if indeed there is a will to move this particular recommendation as a motion, it would be helpful to add something which refers to a further report coming back to Council with regard to a prospective permanent solution. And what I was going to suggest to you was that to make a fair observation of how this is going to work, you might like to contemplate that coming back to you towards the end of winter. So what you've seen is the impact of seasonality on how this arrangement currently works. Now, that's something for you to think about if you wish to do it. But as I said, much has been made of the temporary nature of this in the way in which questions have been framed. And the community is likely to leave here on the basis that they would have an expectation that there will be a permanent solution about which they will be consulted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if anyone was intending to move the officer's recommendation. I'm happy to, if not, I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation, but with an additional 5, which is that a report be brought back to us. I think I heard winter, around about winter.
Thank you, Councillor Pattis.
And that report has reviewed the impact of the adjustment of the closure, and that we've also had some sort of consultation.
Thank you, and I understand you've just foreshadowed that in...
Foreshadowed moving that motion with the amendment.
Thank you. Mayor Tawney.
I was going to ask a question about consultation, but Councillor Pattis had asked for that.
Thank you. Councillor Franco.
One of the speakers suggested we should be using concrete barriers currently for the temporary solution and for the temporary arrangements. and suggested that the water-filled barriers are not adequate. Do you want to comment on that?
Through you, Madam Chair, water-filled barriers are an approved treatment, so they are available for use to regulate and control traffic. The concrete barriers are obviously a lot stronger, and that is an option, but that's not to say that what we actually have through there is unacceptable. They are filled with water, and they are very, very heavy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Paddish, your light's on again. Do you have another question?
No, I was going to move the motion.
I see no other lights on. So, Councillor Sinfield.
Apologies for my late light there. I did think questions were going to go a little longer. Through you to officers, I ask a question in relation to Council's awareness of an MOU that exists between the Australian Electoral Commission and Camberwell Primary School, and any suggestion that in fact Camberwell Primary School will be used as a voting centre at the upcoming federal election.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we were made aware of that, and we've reached out to the organiser, and I'll be meeting with the organiser. That is my intention, just to make sure that we manage the closure to accommodate an election with a date to be determined.
And a further question, if I may, in relation to population density in Camberwell. Have officers considered in this report the impacts of the encouraged population increase from the state government's current housing strategy?
Through Madam Chair, no, we haven't, on the basis that this is responding to the temporary closure and recommending an amendment to a temporary closure at this point.
And I do have a third question. Thank you, and through you. Wondering if, in the opinion of officers, if angle parking would be a more suitable outcome and provide a safer option than 90-degree parking?
Through you, Madam Chair, just want to clarify angle or parallel parking versus 90-degree parking?
No, 45-degree angle parking.
In Reserve Road, both 45-degree and 90-degree parking are in line with standards, and they are used extensively throughout Melbourne. Each has advantages and disadvantages. In terms of space, 90-degree parking gives you the flexibility for more spaces, assuming you've got an adequate aisle width to get into the space. 45-degree bays are a little bit wider, but they actually are a lot easier to get into and out of. So if we're looking at the Burke Road end, I would be saying that we retain the existing 90-degree spaces purely because we've got the flexibility to maximise the parking. They are existing. There won't be the concern about a vehicle entering a school ground because we're banning the parking through there, but we'll still have the 90-degree parking outside the tennis courts.
And finally, if I may, wondering if there is a definition anywhere, I can't find one in the report, in relation to permanent or temporary, as it could be perceived by Section 223 of the Local Government Act. And for officers' ease, that's the statutory reference in relation to the requirements incumbent upon us for a permanent closure.
Through you, Madam Chair, permanent closure will involve a different process where we actually need to formally consult the community, stakeholders, seek submissions in line with Section 221 of the Local Government Act. That will be brought before Council, where access rights to the properties will also come into play, and Council would need to make a decision as to whether or not the road is required for access or not. So that's a little bit different to what we're doing at the moment.
So apologies, Chair, if I may just clarify for Mr Hondrakis. My question was not about process, it was about the definition. What makes something temporary or what makes it permanent? I understand the process is different, but what makes this temporary and not permanent?
Through you, Madam Chair, temporary is addressing the immediate sort of safety issues that are currently on issue.
Sorry, I'm still not quite getting the answer that I'm chasing. Is there a time period applied to permanency or temporary nature of a closure? Is it, more than 6 months is regarded as permanent or anything like that?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is no time limit. Temporary can remain in place for some time as long as council decides to keep it temporary.
Up to us.
So it can be permanently temporary?
Perhaps if I can assist, Madam
Thank you,
Chair.
CEO.
The temporary arrangement can exist, as Mr Hondrakis has said, on the basis that there is considered to be a safety problem. However, it would not be in the spirit of the legislation for it to be left in place for a long period of time. That time has never been specified, which is why I've suggested to you that you might set a time frame for a report to come back as to whether or not there ought to be permanent arrangements put in place. It's worth emphasising that permanent arrangements have a very different statutory process which give people rights to certainly present to council and have their voices heard. And there are opportunities in such cases for appeals to the Supreme Court on points of law in the event that someone believes council has erred. So it's a very different arrangement, but I do think that if you want some assurance around that, the best thing is to include a time frame in whatever motion you put forward for a further report.
Thank you, Mr Storer. Councillor Friend Vieira.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Coming in a bit late on this. Several of the submitters tonight suggested alternatives around a temporary or permanent closure, as I understood it, that would just operate on school days and school times. Could officers give an initial response as to the pros and cons of that?
Through you, Madam Chair. Firstly, it's confusing. How do we open and close it on a daily basis, on a school day? It is confusing for the public. We need signage at Camberwell Road. So that is the biggest issue. If we were to close it, how do we actually ensure that there are no vehicles within the closed section of Reserve Road? How do they get out? I say this because that's what we encountered with the first wedding 2 weeks ago. There was a car trapped within the closure. How do we manage that on a daily basis? The other aspect through this is we'd be inadvertently encouraging school pick-up drop-off activity in Reserve Road at both ends, and that's not what we want. We've tried very hard to communicate with the school and get the message across that we don't want pick-up drop-off activity. We don't want congestion in court bowls. We don't want 120 cars there in the morning peak and 150 in the afternoon. So doing this on a daily basis, opening, closing, is going to lead to issues with safety, access and congestion. So we don't think it's a practical outcome to do this for 192 odd days. I think one of the speakers mentioned before school days of the year.
Madam.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Hondrakis. Councillor Patterson.
Madam Chair, our protocol is usually that the ward councillor moves something like this, so I'm happy to second. I'm happy to be a seconder, but what I'll do is maybe pull back my motion, allow the ward councillor to propose a motion, maybe I'm hoping with my amendment, but we may need to adjourn to discuss the amendment.
Thank you.
Especially there's a time frame involved.
I was actually just talking to governance. I tend to agree that I think it's good to call an adjournment.
And I'd like to move an adjournment motion. That's why I had my light on.
Right, thank you. And do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne-Smith. I'll go to a show. we will go to a show of hands. Those who support an adjournment, those against, I declare that carried unanimously. We will adjourn. Thank you for a very brief period of time. For the benefit of the gallery, we will aim for a brief adjournment of 5 to 10 minutes maximum. So if you can just bear with us, we will return and resume to the meeting shortly. Thank you. Councillors, I'm in search of a motion to resume the meeting. Councillor Sinfield.
So moved.
Thank you. Seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Osborne-Smith, thank you.
I'll second.
I'll seek a show of support. Those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, we will move to, we are in search of a motion. Do I have a mover of a motion? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Yes, I'm happy to move this motion and foreshadow an amendment to this motion, please.
Look, we're happy to support the motion that's been moved, that's on the screen. So can I confirm that is the motion you propose to move?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
All right, thank you, councillors. I'll just give you a moment to read what is there. And at the appropriate time, when you've had a chance to read, I'm in search of a seconder. Councillor Pattis?
Happy to second.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in opposition?
Yes, I'm in opposition, but I've got a question for officers before debate commences, if I may.
Yes, please.
And through you, perhaps to the CEO, I'm wondering whether the final few words of the additional clause 5, foreshadowing an intention to arrive at a permanent solution, in fact, binds us or winky pops us to an outcome, and whether the motion would be better without that.
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't think there is a concern about that on the basis that the permanent solution could be any solution. It could be to revert to a fully open road, it could be to adopt the model that's currently in place or the one being suggested by officers this evening. It doesn't actually specify what that solution might be. Just that whatever it's going to be will be the one council views as permanent.
Thank you, Mr. Storer and Councillor Sinfield. That answers your question?
Yes, it does, thank you. And to get back to where you left off before I so rudely interrupted you, I will signal my opposition.
No problems. Councillor Osborne-Smith, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, just briefly, if I may. A few things to speak to. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of the submitters who made the time and effort to join us here tonight and prepare some presentations, which I think has helped illuminate us councillors as to the concerns they share about the temporary and also the potential permanent closure of this road as an option. So thank you all very much. And your voices have been heard, and hence the suggested amendment to this motion. I'd also like to thank very much Mr. Hondrakis and his team at Boroondara, who have spent a huge amount of hours over the last 8 weeks in a very extensive consultation process with something like over 200 meetings, something like 8 weeks of work on almost a full-time basis, and I think, incredibly detailed response, which has led to the proposed motion tonight, which I think goes a long way to addressing the concerns of us residents and the stakeholders in the area. So thank you very much for that. Otherwise, I'd commend the motion to my fellow councillors. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, Councillor Pattis, as the seconder, would you like to reserve your right to speak?
Yes, please.
All right. No. I invite any councillors to also speak to this motion. I understand that is opposed. Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. I never supported this road closure, temporary or permanent, and I voted against it on the 17th of December, and I feel quite obliged to speak against it tonight, albeit that supporting the officer's recommendation or the motion before us as put by Councillor Osborne-Smith is the lesser of the two evils. I remain opposed to a closure, be it full or partial. Mr Gray spoke earlier of the duty of care that the school and the state government, and I endorse those comments and agree that it is a problem created by the state and further perpetuated by the state with the current population growth encouraged for Camberwell. As a council, we're taking extraordinary steps to appease a small number in the community. The inconvenience it is causing to a significant number, about 15 stakeholders, is immense. Mr McPherson noted in his written submission, but I'll share it for the benefit of the gallery, that in fact the school hours are a mere 20% of the entire year. And further maths, the school hours from 9 till 3:30 equate to just 2.8% of the year. 2.8% of the year when we're taking these steps. Mr McCloskey spoke of the relationship with Our Lady of Victory's school, and the lease is expiring this year as I understand it, and there is no promise of a renewal. Camberwell Primary School is about to embark on the construction of a new building on campus, resulting in them being self-sufficient on the site and the preps and ones no longer needing to cross that road. Colleagues, you may or may not be aware that all state schools, primary and secondary, have a memorandum of understanding with the Australian Electoral Commission. Camberwell Primary School is not exempt from this MOU, and it has been for many election cycles a voting centre attracting thousands of people exercising their democratic right. The process is flawed, and as we take steps towards permanency, I'm concerned that sailing close to the wind in regard to Section 223 of the Local Government Act, requiring us to take statutory steps, as I mentioned earlier. I note in the report that there are 70 uses of the word closure, but only 54 uses of the word temporary in the report, leaving the open door for 16 instances where in fact it could be perceived that there is permanency attached to this. And as we heard earlier, the closure can in fact be permanently temporary or temporarily permanent. My concern and sympathies remain with the affected community members from the Basilica, the Uniting Church, the Tennis Club, and broadly those who use the road and facilities. And I note that the concessions afforded for the smooth running of weddings and funerals do not extend to attendees, only the official hearse and wedding cars. The cost of this exercise is unnecessary, and chopping and changing in itself causes safety issues, confusion and disquiet amongst the community. Additionally, the report estimates the lost revenue impacts would be in the order of $60,000 to $70,000 in future years, with the parking amendments outlined in the report. I'm not sure how, in all good conscience, we can prioritise the safety of one cohort of the community over another, and I echo Mrs Crawley's suggestion that in fact it's discriminatory. It's unfathomable that the decision is made to favour one of the 15 stakeholders in the immediate neighbourhood and, in fact, disregard the 720 members of the Camberwell Trader Association to the detriment of all others. I have one sentence left. Thank you, Chair. I feel I must address the comment made by a submitter earlier allowing a child to lay on the road. This type of conduct is so irresponsible and does not meet community expectations. Extraordinary steps are being taken here, disadvantaging community groups, yet this conduct is permitted by a representative of the school council. I'm shocked.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the feedback from all the stakeholders, and I thank everyone who's made a submission for taking the time and effort to do so. It does help us. It does help ensure that we make decisions that are in the best interests of the community. I'd also like to thank the staff for their advice and consideration. I did support the proposal that was presented to Council in December 2024 for a temporary closure, as is currently implemented on the basis of the safety concerns for hundreds of local young children. These concerns were brought to our attention by parents, by the school, and most importantly in the considered advice of Council's traffic engineers, and I see no basis for dismissing these safety concerns. That said, I'm pleased we also included a requirement for consultation in our previous resolution, and from the advice provided to us, while it seems that the current arrangements are workable and are addressing the safety issues, it's also evident that we can improve the temporary arrangements while not unnecessarily undermining safety. And I should say that I remain a little uneasy and concerned about the safety implications or the and the arrangements of opening up Burke to Burke Road to Reserve Road at Burke Road to two-way traffic and allowing 90-degree angle parking again in Reserve Road. We did have parents here at the Services Committee meeting in December expressing concerns about such arrangements, and I note that the representative of the tennis club has expressed concerns about the cul-de-sac arrangements. On balance though, given the feedback we've received from stakeholders and the advice from Council's traffic engineers, I am sufficiently satisfied and I'll support the proposed changes and support the motion that is presented before us. The concerns that I am particularly that particularly resonate with me relate to the Catholic Church and the Basilica and the impact on funerals and weddings and the traffic arrangements related to that. And finally, going forward, I look forward to seeing a long-term option developed for the civic precinct as a whole and permanent arrangements being resolved in the near future for Reserve Road, and there being consultation in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Gold.
Was I next? I thought Councillor Patters was next.
Councillor Patters has reserved his right to speak.
Reserved his right. Thank you very much indeed. Look, I think we've been facing this potential danger in Reserve Road for many years now, since, and we decided not to close it some years ago, and I think I've always had a concern there for the children, not only a drop-off time, but many times throughout the day. And now that we've opened up the park opposite, and it becomes a much needed and long awaited additional playground for that school, the crossings and use of that road will increase dramatically. I think the solution put forward for closing the road, while it does certainly create some difficulties to others, and they have to be taken seriously, tonight we see some very good improvements put forward to that. And they have come from consultation, particularly consultation with the Catholic Church on Burke Road, where we looked very closely at the access to that site and the difficulties in coming along Burke Road and pulling out bollards. I congratulate the officers on the solution they've come up with in addressing that. Also, other solutions have been put forward tonight, and some very good ones, but Mr. Hundrakis has very competently and professionally explained some of the difficulties that might result from those, and I always thank him also for that and guiding us. We have heard tonight some very real concerns from those in the gallery, but on the other side of that coin, I note that a lot of changes have been made in Campbell Road, Burke Road, Reserve Road, or not Reserve Road, and around the site to provide additional parking, more convenience and things like this. And I just have a feeling with time, those will prove to be very satisfactory for those using the addresses accessed off Reserve Road. So I will be supporting this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Councillor Patters, would you now like to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I originally voted for the temporary closure back in December, albeit at the time I was concerned about the consultation period being so short. It was over a holiday period, and at the time I was convinced that because of potential safety issues with the children, that we didn't need to do the normal consultation process. So I'm glad now that by focusing on a more permanent solution sometime in the future, that we're going to be able to do the even further consultation. But also it was pleasing to hear Mr. Hundrakis, who's been speaking to the various stakeholders, and that this temporary solution does address a lot of those concerns. So I look forward to a more permanent solution, Madam Chair, down the track.
Thank you, Councillor Patters. And Councillor Osborne-Smith, as the mover of the motion, would you like to conclude?
I think I've said enough, thank you.
All right, thank you. I will now put the motion. Those in favour? All right. Those against? I see no opposition. I declare that motion carried unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, officers, thank you, councillors, and most importantly, thank you to the members of the gallery for attending and for your presentations. And we do very much appreciate hearing from you, and we've taken your comments on notice. Thank you very much. Now, for those in the gallery and those watching online, we do have one more meeting on the agenda this evening, but it is a confidential matter to do with a Junction State and BMX Park contractual matter. So we will be closing the meeting to the public, and when we resume, there will be no further items on the agenda. So for those that wish to leave, please do so. Councillors, I will now seek a motion to close the meeting to the public in accordance with section 6(2)(a) subsection 3(1) of the Local Government Act 2020 to discuss a matter in confidential.
Chair, before we do that, I feel it might be about 2 minutes premature. So can I suggest a 2-minute adjournment so we can clear the gallery?
Thank you. I was just going to say we can close the meeting now at this moment in time, though. So I seek a mover to close the meeting.
Happy. Sorry. Happy to move.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you, Mayor Tawney. And seconder?
Happy to second.
All right, thank you. And those in favour, I seek a show of support. All right. Those against? Councillor Sinfield, you're against. I declare that motion carried. We will now close the meeting and wait for the gallery to empty. Thank you. Mover to open the meeting again. Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. And seconder, Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Yes, happy to second that.
All right. I assume as a member of the motion, you don't wish to speak to the motion? No. All right, I will put that motion. Those in favour? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so the meeting is now open. We will now move to the closure of the meeting. I want to thank councillor colleagues, officers and members of the gallery and those watching online for attending the meeting this evening. I now declare the Services Delegated Committee meeting closed at 9:15. Thank you.